So welcome everyone to our 62 Nexus seminar series. On behalf of TUD and UNU Flores, I'm welcoming our first speaker, which is Chrysi Laspidou. She is the Cost Action Chair of NexusNet, and she is a professor at the University of Thessaly. I would like just to give you some small housekeeping rules. So please type question in the Q&A function if you might want to address question to our speaker. Instead, if you would like to have questions or clarification more on the logistics, please insert your question in the chat function. That said, please remember that this is a recorded meeting, and we are looking forward actually to hear more on the Nexus of our distinguished guests. Chrysi, floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for this nice introduction, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to address this nice crowd here. So my name is Chrysi Laspidou, and I'm a professor at the Department of Civil Engineering at the University of Thessaly in Greece. So I come from the engineering background. And I have the privilege and the joy to chair this action on this cost action on the Nexus. We call it Network on Water, Energy, Food Nexus for a Low Carbon Economy in Europe and Beyond, NexusNet for short. So in this seminar, I will talk about the Nexus in general and some of the new ideas that I thought is a good idea to cover. I will explain that this is the culmination of a series of projects, European funded projects on the Nexus that kind of build on top of each other. Just to mention also that I am the Vice President of Research and Technology at Water Europe, that's my background. Which is a Brussels-based organization on water that is, a stakeholder-based organization. So a lot of what we do is also part of Water Europe. Okay, so this is about the cost action. The cost actions are initiatives, are projects funded by the European Commission that are not about research, so you don't conduct new research, but you focus on building networks, and the calls are out without defining what it is they want you to propose about. You could propose about anything that you think is worth creating a network, and based on our experience with the Nexus, the Water, Energy, Food Nexus, the Resource Nexus, we proposed together, of course, with Dr. Sirena Kautsi and some other colleagues that we've been active on the Nexus. We proposed this network that it has just finished its first year. It has 224 members from all over Europe and beyond. And the way to get involved in this networks is first, you might become a management committee member, which means that you represent your country with a vote. So this is a position that has a vote as well. And you are nominated through a process that goes through your nation. So your national contact coordinator on cost, and the nomination comes from them, and then you get approved from the network. So this is one option, and we try to have 2 people, which is the maximum, 2 people from each country in Europe, so that we enlarge our network, and this is an ongoing process. And then you can also have, you can also get involved as a working group member. So this means that you will work in our different working groups, and you will benefit from the activities and from the networking. So the idea here is to take all the research that is already out there on the Nexus, which is very exciting and really has created a lot of enthusiasm in the community, in the research community. We take all these results and we transform them, or we unify them. We analyze the results in order to create more impact. And of course, the goal is also to link with these stakeholders that are important for the Nexus, which might be local authorities, regional, national, or European stakeholders and authorities that might improve, say, some regulation, or or there is a gap in the policy, or we use all the science to inform policy. So we work a lot on the science policy interface, trying to get in contact, though, to understand the policy process. So this is very important for such an action. You need to understand how the policy works, how these regulations or these initiatives get passed through the parliaments, and then how we can influence them with our science. So this is our goal, ultimately. We are very much focused on having a gender balance. We can do better than what we are now. We are 49% female, 51 male, and we also have inclusive target countries. These are countries that are underrepresented under cost and under the research. So in the Horizon or in other consortia, countries that are underrepresented get a priority in a sense. So we focus on getting them involved. But we also have international representation, which adds on the international character of the Nexus that we want to actually form and give then our activities a more international flavor, because what we do, of course, affects everyone at the global level, and not really, it's not something that is very limited to our own little world. Of course, there are things you can do at all levels, but the international theorization of this of the Nexus is really important. I will not tire you much. I will go, I will jump into the research, but just to say that we have made 6 groups, 6 working groups. So if you want to join this action, and I encourage you to join the action, this is what we had when we submitted. Now we have more. A lot of these countries are all represented, but we want you to get involved, because our strength and our wealth is the people that actually are interested. These are what I call the Nexus enthusiasts. These are the people that will create the community. We want, the goal is to create a community of practice, a community that will actually take these ideas and make them operational on the ground. For now, this has all been quite a bit in the literature, in the models, maybe not so much showing how to make it operational on the ground. And this is what we focus on in this work. So these, you can see our working groups. There is a policy. There is we want to create a large database with all the different models and the case studies of the Nexus, because there has been quite a bit of interest from the community, and so funded projects through Horizon, through Prima, through FAO. There is various different instruments that have been funding projects. Results come out, but if you don't unify them under one framework, maybe they are not as important. So this is what we do, and as I said, we would love to have you involved. Let me go to the next one. Okay, so let me just say a few things about the Nexus, and just cover a bit of the research and what we are dealing with. And as I said, this is part of what we do In the projects, I have this is not all the projects that we have, but I would say these are the most relevant to the Nexus. So Sim for Nexus is what we started, and a lot of the work that I will present here comes from Sim for Nexus that has been concluded. And we worked a lot on various case studies. I will represent the case study of Greece that I will just say highlights from the case study of Greece, so you understand, you get an idea where we focused. And then ongoing right now is Nexogenesis, which pretty much takes the Sim for Nexus ideas and the models and takes them one step further, adding specifically the ecosystem. So it's WEFE now, so water, energy, food, ecosystem, specifically here. And then a very, very new that just started is BioNext. I will speak a bit about also this new project that focuses this, as its name says, it's all about the biodiversity. So as you see, both projects, Nexogenesis and BioNext, that are new, focus on bringing in ecosystem, bringing in the biodiversity element, which has been seen as a very vulnerable area since we are experiencing a collapse, actually. All right, so the need has been formulated and has been expressed that we need to include biodiversity very explicitly in what we do, in our planning, in the goals that we set, because it is currently really suffering. And then Arsinoi is another large project that I coordinate. And this is about climate change and climate change adaptation. It's a large, like 15 million euro project with 41 partners, very extensive with many, we have many case studies that are, a lot of them are also transboundary and cover different countries. Here, we also have a few Nexus approaches. We look at through the lens of climate adaptation, climate hazards, and focusing on making these societies resilient. So this is what resilience is an important thing that we focus in Arsinoi. Of course, this is the theme throughout. And NexusNet is the cost action for which I talked about. Okay, so as you all know, we have these 17 goals, and if one wants to actually achieve these goals, we see that there are so many interlinkages and interdependencies in these goals that it is not easy it is not easy to achieve across the board if you only focus on one. One should focus on achieving all of them. So this is again a little bit, it goes at the heart of the Nexus analysis, that we look into optimizing the use of resources, which includes water, energy, and food. We optimize the use of resources in order to safeguard our ecosystem conditions and be actually productive at an optimal level for all. Why? Because there are interlinkages. If you only focus on one, then you know that you cannot achieve the goals on the other because of these interdependencies. So the Nexus has been recognized as important even for the SDGs if we want to reach them all. So in this one, we show interdependencies between water, energy, food, land use, climate. This is what we were working on in Sim for Nexus, and you see there are interlinkages that are from water to energy, meaning that water influences energy, and there are also interlinkages the other way around, which means that energy influences water. So in this way, when water influences energy, you have energy being influenced by. So if you make such an analysis, you see on the one hand which sector is very influential, which sector is the one that you find spreading across in all elements, in all resources, and you also identify which one is the one being influenced by, which makes it the most vulnerable. So this analysis has a lot of value to do, and we have done it for Nexus, and I can share with you what we did for Greece specifically. Of course, this will change depending on the. I mean, this is not universal. This will change depending on the case study and on the setting. So we have of course, the pressures on natural resources are growing, and the interdependencies are there, forming these synergies and trade-offs. And what do we mean by synergies? Synergies would be investing on a single sector, focusing on a single sector, but having recognized that by improving in one sector, you actually have benefits, co-benefits in other sectors. So this would be a scheme of synergy, a synergetic scheme, where you invest in one and see benefits, not only that one, but also in others. And the trade-offs would be where there are some counteractions, and this is also, and some conflicts, and this is also important to recognize. In that case, you choose where and how much of these trade-offs you take into account, and you accommodate on the analysis. So some of the examples here, I list sustainable hydropower. I mean, if we think about the issue of hydropower, you have water being used to produce energy, but then water is altered at the end. Yes, it is available for use, but the regime at which it is available is variable, and it is related to the energy needs. So the energy company might use water to produce energy whenever it wants, but the water then becomes available at times when it might not be useful to the farmer, say, or such use of hydropower in this changing regime will definitely affect the ecosystem. Maybe you don't maintain the minimum ecological flows. Maybe your ecosystem cannot really develop as it should be because of the changes in the hydrological regime. So this is a case where if there is no regulation of the dam, for example, that operates, you might have hydropower that causes, on the one hand, produces energy, but on the other hand, really alters the regime for water and for food production if you have farmers downstream, which is usually the case. Then the biofuel debate: do you use resources, land, water, energy to produce biofuels, or do you use it to produce food? Here, the limitation is land. And then you use water, and you use possibly some fertilizers or whatever one needs to use for the production of the biofuels. And that is done not to guarantee food security, but to do it for energy. So that debate, and then how does that affect the prices? Because then the production of, say, wheat or whatever it is you replace to put your biofuels, the production shrinks, and this, as a result, has an effect on prices, which might be reflected to the rest of the world. And that makes feeding people more difficult. So food security might be affected. So there are various areas where this could be obvious and very important. Of course, securing water and food, since water is used for food production through irrigation, most of the times, and water is claimed by many. So there are many antagonistic uses of water. You may want it for hydropower, you may want it for tourism, you may want it, to fill up swimming pools, for example, or from farmers, or from industry, or for, fracking, or for whatever you might want to use this limited resource, but how do you secure water and food security at the same time? This is what is at the nexus, the heart of the nexus. Competing uses, one needs also to take into account that when there is a limited resource and there are antagonistic uses, this might lead to conflict at the end. So this poses a risk to the abundance of a resource, and this will showcase the different conflicts of interest, and you may actually have real conflict. And it is not rare that such cases have been recorded. So the competition in uses of water, of energy, and the prioritization of these is important. Okay, so definitely water is used for food and land, water is used for energy. So you see that the interlinkages are there. Energy is used for water because energy, in order to have water in your faucet, for example, there is a lot of energy that goes behind it. All networks are pressurized. Water might be pumped from groundwater. So you have pumping, and then you have energy for treatment of water. So a lot of energy goes into water to have it at this condition that would be, for example, drinkable. Energy is also required for, of course, transportation, for fertilizer production, for the machinery, if you think of energy for food and land. And then, of course, food is feed, there is an interlinkage between food and land, because there is land use that might be used for mining, biofuel, for other wind and solar energy, for photovoltaics. I mean, you see that a lot, say, even in the Mediterranean. You might see people, because it's more profitable to place photovoltaic panels, they might get rid of the crops, put the panels, and so in that case, the land is used for that. So is that good? Yes, it's renewable energy. Yes, solar energy, but you sacrifice a limited resource, which is land, which means you shrink your agricultural production, and this has some repercussions on food security, on prices, and everything. So in order to do this, we need to see the optimal of the group, the optimal of the whole of the nexus, and not specifically of each one of them. And of course, at the heart of this is the equitable and sustainable access. So one thing is the abundance of resources, which is, of course, very important, but on the other hand is equitable access to those resources. So we definitely know that when a resource is lacking, it will be the wealthier people that will have access to it, and the poor people and the ones that are more disadvantaged will not have access to it. We know through studies, of course, that, for example, in countries like India, where supply is intermittent, you might see it's usually young girls that might stop going to school because they need to fetch the water for the family. So this also shows how, on the one hand, is abundance, but on the other hand, is about equity and equitable access, and it's about a just transition. It's about doing things better in order to guarantee abundance and plenty of resources being available, but also we need to focus on understanding the social structures and understanding what drives the access to these resources, and to work on that, because you will see that, especially if we speak about climate and climate change, you will see that the ones that are poor and the ones that don't have that are marginalized, that are vulnerable, are the ones that are hit the hardest. And this is not something that we can ignore, and I think it has become very obvious also with COVID, when we saw that first of all, we are not prepared. We realized how little prepared we are for a crisis. We realized how, with all these technologies, still something that we should expect that might happen found us completely unprepared. And we saw that the people that lost their lives and that, had a lot to lose are the ones that are most disadvantaged. So equitable access is not something that we should think lightly or take lightly. All right, let me just go very briefly about what we did in SIM4 Nexus. So we had to, and of course, I want to emphasize that a lot of these projects are very data intensive and data hungry, which also signifies the large importance of technologies. Technologies are there for us to take advantage and to use and to exploit in order to be able to gain this knowledge that is so essential for the good planning. So our work is done in various levels. Our work is basically should be anthropocentric, so it should have humans and human behavior and understanding as I said, the social context and the way people interact with in a systemic way, the way people interact, the society and the nature and the ecology, how that interacts as a whole. And at the same time, we need to use technologies to the highest degree in order to be able to tackle these big challenges. So these big challenges will be tackled through technologies and data science, artificial intelligence, neural networks, machine learning. All this is at the heart of what we do, because we need to forecast the future. And how do you forecast the future if you don't have enough data to understand the past, to understand where we go from one point to the next? And this is all done in a very technical way, and intensive way in that sense, that uses data, and it is about sensors, it's about a large database, it's about Earth observation. So we can come and use a lot of the satellite data to record all of these that we need. And this has to be done at different scales. The scale, very important. It's different what you do at the global level, at the country level, at the regional level, at the local level, at the citizen level. So all these levels interact at the same time. And the policies, if you think of the policies coming as a different layer in the socioeconomics, policies also play at different levels. We have European, we have national, we have regional, we have local, and then we have human perception and behavior. All these need to be considered. It becomes a mega complex model, but which is very fascinating at the end. It really excites me to think of, all how wide this spreads. And in order to be complete, you need to capture everything, really. If you stay only on one level, so this is systemic, but it is a system of systems, really. A large systemic approach that takes everything into account. So here we started with the models. First of all, for the water module, first of all, we recorded, this is for Greece, we did it at the country level and split it at the regional level. So we played on two, Greece has, we worked on RBDs, river basin districts. Greece has 14 RBDs, so we developed 14 of these models, and then we took the grand one, which was the national level, and we could play things at the RBD level and see how that affects the top level, and the other way around. So this also gave us the sense of scale. And I will, of course, speak about the sense of time. As I said, this is very complicated problem. So water, of course, includes surface water and groundwater. So we took them separate, because this is also another level of complexity. If you look at water as a whole, you might think, oh, we're okay. You know, it's not so bad. We don't have so much deficit, say, in a country like Greece. If you look at the data, you will think, Greece is not so bad in terms of water, even though we know that Greece is quite bad in terms of water, in the sense that we experience water scarcity, and our hydrological balances at places become very negative. So if you look at Greece as a whole, is okay. If you look at Greece as a surface water, it seems okay. If you look at Greece at the groundwater level, you will see that you have a fast overuse. So I mean, the water exploitation index that should be around 40%, I mean, at the highest should be 40%, which means you only use 40% of your renewables. If you look at groundwater, last time we checked some of the recent data, it was 160%. So you realize that you need to go down to the level to find the weak link. So a lot of the groundwater is overexploited, with, of course, the ramifications of that, the salinization, you know, seawater intrusion, and the over pumping and destroying this resource, you know, since you have the salinization from groundwater. But here you see the water, groundwater and surface water, how it interacts with the climate element. So precipitation and evapotranspiration, you know that these two will change in time. We have the predictions with climate change. Precipitation becomes less overall. It becomes, you know, very choppy. So it comes in storm surges, and so it creates damages. At the evapotranspiration changes. So this regime, you know, it will change, and you have here all the different uses. Some of them related to the built environment, urban, industrial, and cooling water for energy. And here you see the interrelationship. So water and energy links through pumping in our case. We did not do hydropower. For example, for the water cycle, we have the surface water, the groundwater, there is the recharge that takes water from the surface to the ground. We had the precipitation and evapotranspiration, as I showed, surface water demand, return, and then the groundwater demand were recorded separately. And we managed to find a lot of these data in large databases like Eurostat and Elstat, which would be the Greek statistical authority, the national statistical authority, which has sometimes much better analysis. Whenever it was not available, we used disaggregation algorithms and proxy variables that allowed us to infer, you know, the use of some of these. And this is something that we do, and we use smart algorithms to do that. All right, so this shows a little bit how, this is a Sankey diagram that shows how groundwater is split among the different river basins. So you see here which, and where it goes. For example, GR8 comes with, so GR8, which is Thessaly, if I'm not mistaken, has a lot of the groundwater coming in, uses a lot of groundwater, not so much surface, a little bit of surface water, and most of it goes to irrigation, while the others are smaller. Okay, and here imagine, I mean, if you look at a country like Greece, most of it goes to irrigation. So it's not, it doesn't, you don't need to be Einstein to realize that you need to focus on irrigation and fixing that. Don't come and, you know, work, say, on livestock, for example, which is a very small slice. Just look at the big picture and invest in that. Very quickly, we did the same for energy, really recording all kinds of, we recorded all around Greece where the different power plants are, what kind of fuel they use, coal, oil, gas, renewable, where they are located. The pie, the size of the pie is the megawatts that these power plants have. So the wattage, that means how powerful they are. And you see they're all, you know, a lot of them are located at the same place. Here, there is a lot of coal. That's why we have these coal power plants. And they use water for cooling. And if you look at the other data, this is also a very agricultural and a very touristic. And so everything happens in this region. Same as in Thessaly. Thessaly has a lot of the other problems, not so much the coal production, but a lot of this stresses even more the system at the local level. And this shows a little bit of the, as I was telling, you do all the analysis, to identify hotspots around the country. And this comes only through this analysis. Before, you may not be able to see the competitions. But here you see where, for example, this is the energy sector. What is used and where. If you look at the map, the energy usage map of Greece, you see oil is the biggest actor. And a lot of it goes to transportation, right? A big chunk of it goes there. Coal is also important. And most of it goes to power generation. Almost all goes to power generation. And then gas, electricity, and biomass, as you see. So you see where, what these sectors, where it goes. And if you have the online version, you hover over these arrows, and you can see the values as well. So this is all quantified on where it is going. The food, yeah, I don't want to focus a lot on that. So we map everything, all the food that is produced, all the different crops, because a lot of our interventions might be on that, changing maybe from one crop to the next in order to improve conditions, maybe to allow for food security, to shorten the value change. So, which is something that we found very important during COVID. Maybe we want to produce locally and not import so much. Changing the different crops and how all this produces greenhouse gas emissions, how it interacts with the built environment, and then the climate, of course. We have the ET, as climate we mean greenhouse gas emissions. So how many we produce, how many are traded under the ETS scheme, how many come from land use change and forestry, how many from wastewater, how many from livestock, and how many from energy. As you see here, if you want to map all the emissions, the national emissions, look how unevenly they're split among the different locations in Greece. GR9 is the one that I showed you with the coal mines, very big here. A lot of it is related to fuel, and from fuel emissions due to fuel use, as you see, oil is the biggest actor, coal and gas are a bit smaller. And then we have the other emissions from the other sources. And this shows you the emission. This shows you a bit of it's a chord plot. So this is for Greece. And you see that a lot of the emissions are due to the energy, and many come from built environment, which is transportation. And you might want to, and you see the land, the water, the energy, all of it, how it interacts. And here you have this is the national, and the national is an addition of all these different river basin districts that I showed you. And I show here 3 just to see how different they are. So look at Macedonia, Western Macedonia, which is 9, the one with the coal mines, really massive emissions. This is Attica, and which all comes from the built environment. And Peloponnese, for example, much less. And we have a lot of them here in comparison to sea. And this work is, we've published it in Stoughton. Okay, so let me go a little bit now to speak about what I found very, very, very interesting. And I have developed this interest a lot through BioNext, which is the new project that we run. So the way we've been seeing things so far was a bit the IPCC perspective. So you see climate, you focus on emissions. It's all about climate and emissions. And for the most part, biodiversity is left out. A lot of the narratives that we talk about do not have biodiversity at their heart. So now there is the IPBES, again, intergovernmental panel, just like the IPCC, which is an intergovernmental panel, but it's not for climate change, it's now for biodiversity and ecosystem services. And they perform a scoping report, which is really a landmark work, really nice work. They perform a Nexus assessment among all of these. But as you see, biodiversity is first. So at the heart of it is biodiversity. So here we focus on biodiversity. Climate, water, food, energy, and health. Health also becomes an important element. So the goal here is to see where we were, where we are now, and look at the future. Is really a nice way to develop visions for the future. And it's all about that. But in order to do that, we need to perform this understanding of these interlinkages, as I discussed a little bit so far. And of course, the ultimate goal is to inform the development of policies and actions. So what is so unique about what is done in the IPBES? It recognizes the interlinkages with the SDGs. As I showed you, and as you will see a lot in the literature, there is a big analysis on how the SDGs are interlinked. And then it focuses on human health and biodiversity. Biodiversity is looked at as a very critical part of life, of our everyday existence, nature, and how that affects health. And as health, we speak about physical health, social health, and mental health. So health at all levels, which becomes very, very important and should not be overlooked. The analysis emphasizes response options, and again, the synergies and trade-offs that they create. So response in different elements. So some of the questions that are asked, and this is where we, in BioNext, we are focusing a lot on this, and I am very excited to start on this project, and look forward, hopefully in a couple of years, we will be able to report on that. But our analysis in BioNext will feed into this IPBES analysis. And here, the Nexus is looked a bit differently. That's why I wanted to present it. It's not what we, it is what we did, but then again, it has biodiversity at its center. None of the stuff I told you is a lot about biodiversity. So again, we see how all these, how our use of water, energy, food so far in the past, these interactions, the Nexus, how this has impacted biodiversity, and what is the place of nature in the life of people, especially if you look at the disadvantaged and indigenous people, which becomes also very relevant in local communities. And what is done with climate, even though the focus is not on climate as with climate change, but climate needs to be taken into account to foresee the future. Also, why biodiversity? See, this answers a lot. I see we do this a lot in, for example, in Exogenesis. We have a case study between Bulgaria and Greece. So we go and we speak to the Bulgarian stakeholders. They don't care much, and I'm sorry to say, not only the Bulgarians, the Greeks as well. You know, they don't have biodiversity high on their agenda. It's not really in their minds that they need to safeguard it. It's really, people are fighting for their livelihoods, for how much money they will make at the end of the month, and biodiversity for some reason has been left out. So we need to bring it again out in the picture and recognize and value. See, IPBES does a lot of these beautiful, I love the work of valuation of nature. What is the value of nature in human health and well-being? And how is this role facilitated or impacted by water, food, or energy production in this complex system that I presented? How are the SDGs placed there, and how can these synergies be maximized in order to enhance biodiversity? Because biodiversity is left out a little bit. So how can we maximize the SDG collaboration and interaction to enhance biodiversity and resolve the conflicts between development and biodiversity conservation. Of course, you understand that these two elements are in conflict. We have these protected areas, for example, where development cannot happen. And there's always the people that push. And in Greece, I can guarantee you have many very much built and developed protected areas, quote unquote protected, that have not stayed protected. So is there a way to develop sustainably? Is it possible? Can we do that? These are some of the questions. And safeguard biodiversity. You know, what is it that we want to safeguard really? Is it space? Is it the species? What is it? So some of the questions here are, what are the various policy management and financial options that we can use to conserve sustainability, biodiversity? And because this, of course, we live in a world of trade, of finance, of policies. We need to see how we can embed those into what we want to achieve for biodiversity and nature. And this could be done if we connect it, if we give it a value, and we connect it to people and health. And of course, how can these policy options improve climate change resilience? This is a lot of what Arsinoi is doing, this project that I was telling you about. So it always tries to define resilience, and resilience is different, of course, at different settings. It is different in Greece. The resilience is different in Denmark, or in Finland, or in Africa. So we need to define what it is, what it means, what are the hotspots, and how we can use these instruments and these solutions to safeguard it. And the other question is, how can we do this integrated management of all these elements in order to minimize the negative impacts to biodiversity? How can we safeguard human and health? But all this, I mean, there is a lot of talk about the integrated management. There was the integrated water resources management, and now the Nexus comes to say not just water, but all resource management integrated in order to safeguard biodiversity, which of course needs adaptability of food, bioenergy, indigenous, local communities. A lot of that comes in it. And we need to look into the future. We need to look into the future and, of course, define the future. This is also important. So I'm really excited that, we will be using this framework in BioNext. So, and I don't know how familiar everyone is with this, but this is really a new theoretization used by IPBES. That's why I have the logo there. So this is what has been proposed as the framework in order to develop our future. So what is this? What are we talking about? So the effort is to capture diverse and positive values. See, not focus on the negative pathways that lead us to say detriment, that we see this world being being led to its doom, but try to focus on the diverse and positive values for human-nature relationships. And these are mapped on this triangle. In each one of the vertices of the triangle, we have 3 ways to value nature. So here it's all about nature, as you see, is the Nature Futures framework. So how do we value nature? What are the aspects of nature that we might use? So one might be nature for nature, the intrinsic value of nature. A bit of an extreme, if you ask me, but we can talk a little bit more about these visions. Nature for nature, nature for society, and nature as culture. So we have these three types of values. One would be the intrinsic value, the other would be the instrumental, and the other the relational value of nature in its relationship with people. Under these, as you can see, these are three circles, and they encompass these visions that are, we want to stay within the triangle. Some of these are outside. So the really reliable, the meaningful and futures that are sustainable would be within the triangle. Some of them fall outside. And then, of course, there is a place where they all intersect. Of course, as you can see, these are conceptual. So this is what we've been working on. We've been working not so much on the numbers, and I will show you in the next one. There is a lot of sketching as well here. So here we have, we will be running a workshop, and they asked me to look for a visual note taker. So a lot of this is visual in order to be able to communicate it with people. You don't want to give so much graphs and pie charts. And as I showed you, even the Sankey diagrams and the core diagrams might be even not something that we want to communicate here. Here, we want to co-design with the stakeholders, and we want to focus on the ideas, on the concepts. And then we, of course, behind it, there will be technical analysis, but we want people to actually use, get engaged and not be turned off because something is too scientific or too far away from them. We want to bring it closer to the people. So the phases that this framework describes, and of course, this is the reference. I invite you all to read it. It's really a nice article, which is at the heart of what is done, and there is various other articles under the IP-Best, the Nature Futures Framework. So you go with the stakeholders in phase one, visioning and description of desirable futures. So here, the stakeholders are asked to describe the vision. Where might they want the world to be in terms of nature? How much nature do they want in their lives and in their societies? Just the vision, not how realistic this might be. Then in phase two, you might want to go and elaborate on these visions. How might let's make it clearer. Let's see, make it more specific. And then, as you see, this is not with the stakeholder. This is scientifically. You look into the formulation of these visions and the pathways, how you might get there. What might be the ways that will lead you there? And of course, these pathways are in accordance to what we have. These pathways follow the instruments, financial, policy, the existing. For example, if we use, say, coal throughout, if we or oil, or if we have absolutely no protection for marine life, if we have if our soils are not sustainable, we know that this could not, and if there's no, if the economy drives this and there is nothing to limit it, we know that you actually have a cap, you have a top that you cannot overcome. So then you start thinking that you need to change these pathways, to develop these pathways, give societies more instruments to develop these pathways and get to where you want. So the formulation of this framework might go back and tell the stakeholders that, listen, this is what you want, but you're not going to get there with what you're giving me as tools, the tools being the financial, the policies, all these things that might get me there. So then you ask the stakeholders to refine and start thinking of how we can get there. What can we do more? Pour more money in one direction, or give more incentives, make things more just. Okay. And at the end, you might lead to a first set of nature future scenarios. And if you go into the article, it has some nice description on that. Okay, so in a sense, these are the three, so this is the triangle, but now seeing as a 3D a little bit. So these are the three edges: nature for society, nature for nature, and nature as culture. And you see this is actually bows out, you know, these realities. And this is where we are now. And these are the different, if say some stakeholders decide that they want to be here or here or here, if this is the vision, then we see how we might be able to get there. And then, of course, we see that the reality will not get us there. We will be somewhere lower. I'm just saying in principle. And then you redesign, as I told you. Okay, so let's see what that might mean. So what is the meaning of nature for society? So nature for society might think of a species diversity, but in agriculturally important plants and animals and exploited aquatic ecosystems. So in this case, you use nature. Yes, you safeguard nature, but you use it for society. Okay, so it is there to be exploited for society, to feed, you know, to take these ecosystem services out of it. In nature for nature, you focus on preserving ecosystem integrity. So that is the focus. The whole society works towards that direction to safeguard nature. And nature as culture links or brings in front the value of nature as a cultural element, which might have some flagship species identified by local communities and indigenous people, and you safeguard those, but you bring out the value of nature as a way of living, because this is how many people live and exist. So let me just go through briefly, and I don't know how much time I have. I think I have a little more time, right? Hopefully. Please stop me if I need to stop. I mean, I have about 10 minutes more, I think. Okay, so, and these are the narratives. I assume many of you must have seen the SSPs, you know, the socioeconomic pathways that have narratives. And there's the SSP 1, 2, 3. I will say a little more about this, comparing those narratives with these narratives and how, and what are we doing? We're coming with new narratives, new goals, or are we thinking of combining these two? It is an important place to be. So let's go through in each one of these are the three vertices that we described before, and there are places to be in between that are described. What would it mean to be in between of nature as culture, nature for society, for example? So the first one, nature for nature, I would say this is a bit more extreme as far as I am concerned personally. So in this one, you value nature on Earth intrinsically, and people, let's read this, people live in dense, self-sustaining urban areas designed to minimize the role of humans in the biosphere. So you try to contain yourself in order to not disturb nature and let it develop for its intrinsic value. And in this case, human population cannot be very high. Of course, we don't kill people, right? But what we do, I think this signifies education and family planning, so that the world is kept smaller. Nature for society. What does it mean? So optimizing nature. This would be the title. And for the first one is arcology, which is a nice term if you want to look into it. It defines how people live in these communities. Optimizing nature would think of a world that is that has the knowledge and the technology, but it uses it not, to do other things, but to maximize the efficient and sustainable utilization of nature's contribution to people. So this is this is an area where nature and people interact strongly, and you use what you have there in order to optimize the services to the people. There is reciprocal stewardship. I like the names that they give, which focuses on nature as culture on this vertex. So here you have, there is a reciprocal relationship between what people do for nature and what nature does for people. So you look at the diversity, but on both biological and cultural sense, and these are co-conserved. So you conserve both biological, but also cultural biodiversity in biocultural systems. Also a very interesting place to be. Innovative commons, I think personally, this is my favorite, between optimizing nature, between nature for society and nature as culture. So being in the edge of these two, and again, of course, one can exist in between, it can exist at any point, which means that it focuses more on one value of nature and not the other so much. But this is a continuum. But these are just indicative visions. So in this one, people build a world of innovative ecological commons. They live in interconnected green-blue cities and rural settlements across land and seascapes. So this is very nice. So not only in the landscapes, but also the seascapes with green and blue cities, bringing all this, the benefits of nature in people with innovation at its heart. So people also use local and traditional knowledge, which comes from the culture element. And this is the way to manage and expand the use of ecosystems. So I invite you to go in and read some of these things. I mean, it goes along these lines. I don't want to go through each one of them, but I hope I've given you an idea of what this means here. And this is just a little bit just to show you. In the article they have this this vision. So this might be something that you go through a stakeholder workshop. We do plan such workshops in BioNext, where we will bring together those stakeholders and we will develop visions. And these are some of the visions and what they might look like. And as you can see, it is very intensely artistic in such simple drawings. So where do you imagine the marine life? How do you use the oceans? Is it to produce food just to feed the people, or is it to also enhance the ecosystem? How you produce food, how you see the dynamics of nature, you know, the force of nature, the rains, the tornadoes, all these things, how you accommodate that into your everyday life. How do you see culture? And then how do you transition from urban to rural environments, how that flows, how you imagine prosperity. What is prosperity? Is it, you know, cement and steel and glass buildings, or is it rich ecosystems and nature? And how do you see the use of water? So these are some of the examples, and I invite you to go and see a little more on these specific visions. So this would be the result of some of those stakeholder analysis. So I want to just, I'm almost finishing. So this is my last slide. Those two now, the IPBES and the IPCC, where do they stand? Because myself, I've been accustomed, and we worked with the SSPs, the shared socioeconomic pathways that are mapped, cross-mapped with the RCPs, the representative concentration pathways of greenhouse gas emission scenarios. So these focus on climate change and development. So they focus on these interlinkages. So the IPCC gives us these pathways and the narratives. There are narratives for all of these. And for example, there's the SSP1, which is sustainability. Only one speaks a little bit about what the, if you see here, NFF-based scenarios could be regarded as being in line with SSP1. So only the green road and sustainability is talked about a bit on SSP1. The others do not cover much at all. The green, the nature, biodiversity, etc. They're all focusing on climate change, on how to develop in a decarbonized way, basically. There is middle of the road, regional rivalry, and a lot of it is, well-being is usually talked of as income, as GDP. So, so the development and how well people are doing is translated as how much money they make, basically. While here, it comes into the, so we have these 5 SSPs, and only the SSP1, you might say, maps on the different scenarios that I showed you. So the SSP scenarios do not include biodiversity, except for SSP1, which focuses vaguely on environmental sustainability. So with SSPs, we have the assessment of the impacts of climate change on biodiversity. They might allow that, but in general, they do not account for biodiversity in the development pathway. So how we develop in a biodiversity-rich world is not really taken into account. Neither do we have the feedbacks between biodiversity and climate, because this is also important, how climate affects biodiversity, how biodiversity in turn affects climate. So in this regard, we can say that the Nature Futures framework narratives complement the SSPs, but they do that using the value perspectives on biodiversity, and they fill the gap. So we might not see them as opposing or counteracting or antagonistic, but as synergistic. So you can focus on all of them at the same time, and at the end envision a future that might also use the value perspective on biodiversity. So this Nature Futures framework wants to overcome the limitations of the SSP regarding nature through a more integrative analysis, and includes, of course, policies and different sectors. It does a different nexus analysis, and with the human and natural systems and their interaction at the heart of it, in relation to the 3 value perspectives for nature, meaning nature for nature, nature for culture, nature for society. So this is where I stop. I want to ask you if you have a chance to follow a lot of this on social media. This is my personal account. And then all of this, NexusNet CA is the cost action. BioNex is the new project. Arsenoi is the one that I'm coordinating. And of course, you can find us in LinkedIn and in Instagram. For some of them, we are coming into Instagram as well. So I will stop sharing, and thank you for your patience through my long speech, but I hope it
was a very engaging lecture, so I'm really delighted that we could have you actually here. So that said, I think I have a couple of questions for you from the audience. And so thank you for the interesting presentation. You talk about how each level of the Nexus analysis gives a different perspective. To your experience, from which level would you start the analysis, and at which one do you consider the most impactful one?
Yeah, this is a nice question. I mean, it's like picking between your kids. Which one do you like, your son or your daughter? So it is. As I said at the end, I think by making it, taking into account only the very strict engineering approach, we lose a lot. We lose a lot, and we could not, and we should not underestimate. And I think this is what is happening now. we see that we have underestimated biodiversity. Yes, we focus insanely on the carbon, yes, but then we should not ignore all of them. Unfortunately, there is more work to be done, and we cannot, we cannot be comfortable if we and we have a lot of work to do in the decarbonization, and I don't think we're doing well at all. If you look at some of the recent models, we go for the 3.8 degree. Right now, if we keep the way we're going to 3.8. And it's if you try to tweak some of these models, act like you're a magician and start changing things, you will see it's not happening overnight. Even if you had the power to change everything, say you stop coal everywhere on the planet, you do everything electric, you do it's not going to change that easily, because nature has a delay in the way it hysteresis, if you wish. So unfortunately, we need to be wary of both. If we only focus on the decarbonization at the expense of biodiversity, then we will see how big the crisis will be. The crisis will be that we experience will be even bigger and more tragic. So I think we should hand in hand the two worlds, and this is another difficulty, that these two worlds are different. See, this is another challenge. You have many of the more decarbonization people or energy people might cringe at all this nature stuff, because we are realistic. We know that you speak about culture and they say, oh, come on, I can't be bothered. But no, these are the elements of human well-being, and we've seen where our well-being has gone, not very far, I think, with all the focusing only on the building and developing. We need to see also the other elements that are really so central to human well-being. I think maybe we realize now that we've reached our end in terms of well-being, and wealth or high buildings or all this may not be at the heart of it. So I think we need to do both, just to be very, very brief. Unfortunately, we need to try more, and we need to focus on how to work together with these two societies, these two groups of people, and how to expand our curricular. I'm a professor. I don't dare to teach these things in class, if I may say so, because our engineering world is very conservative and it's very old-fashioned, and it's not easy to interject some of these new ideas. So there is a lot to be done, and the young generation is the one that should be pushing that. We need inspired people to lead the way for this. So this is where you guys come in.
To pave the path.
Exactly.
So next question. As you stated, operationalization of the resource nexus is limited, and the area needs to be focused for future research. I'm interested in hearing more about your experience concerning major barriers and challenge that needs to be overcome to facilitate the smooth transition from research onto implementation of the nexus knowledge. Thank you.
All right. Yes, another very good question. We in the research world, we've been speaking about the nexus, but if you go out, we go out with stakeholders in different settings. They don't know. They don't know what it is. What are you talking about? They don't know. So in our there's, as I showed you, there's so many projects, so much money has been spent on this, but this knowledge has not been distilled down to the city level or the regional level. So we need its actions like the NexusNet, the cost action that might allow us, and I'm not saying that we will manage because it's a daunting task, but might allow us to start going to people and telling them that this is the way to really achieve sustainability. So we hope we hope that, for example, the SDGs will come with some mandate. So soon, for example, if you're a company and you want to get a loan, for example, or you want to be financed for something, you will need to go through this ESG. You need to make sure that what you do is at some point sustainable. Then you might ask for the help of some of us, some of this community, to tell you how to achieve sustainability. And there you will hear about the Nexus. So it has to be some of the policies, some of the regulations that will push people to look more into it. Then it has to be us bringing the success stories out, and the cost action. NexusNet is trying to do that. This is what we're working on, to identify these success stories and bring them out and communicate them. So a lot of this is about communication. You know, it's not about it's not about us being in an office and coming up with cool models. This all needs to be communicated. In the cost action, this is what we try to do. We try to take what everybody has done and create these portfolios of success stories, and then go out and start talking about it and creating this community of practice. We are doing it. I didn't have the chance to talk a lot about this, but we are also doing it at an international level. We are collaborating with the US in a similar. The US also deals a lot with the Nexus. They call it FEW, not WEF. We say here WEF. They call it FEW, food, energy, water. So they have a little bit of a different, different way to say things. When I read in a US paper, I understand it comes from the US without seeing from the way they treat the issue. But it's time now to work together and to collaborate and bring an international message. We actually are going to have a webinar on the internationalization, where we bring a lot of these people from Africa, from the US, from, of course, from Europe, of course, from our backyard, but also Australia. We might have people from different continents to tell us how they use the Nexus. We were talking about this with Serena, actually, when she was in Greece, that a lot of our societies are quite a bit set already, and there is not so much room for change, because people have mentalities that are pre-decided and they go with them. Some of the lower income countries maybe, and hopefully they might be more open, because there is not so much, maybe there's less structure or less of these set communities, and there might be more freedom to shape from the beginning. So maybe there is hope, and we need all of you. We need all of you to make this community of practice of the Nexus enthusiasts that will act as seeds. And if you read this paper that I showed you on the Nature Future Framework, Pereira et al., you will see they speak about the seeds, some of these projects that might act as seeds, and then they grow, some of these initiatives. It is all collaborative. It has to be human-centric, and it has to be always with stakeholders. Sooner or later, our word will be heard, you know.
Thank you, Chrysi. So maybe some take-home message as well, that there is not one Nexus approach, but it depends really from which angle we are looking at, and probably we are thinking of how resources in the Nexus context can be also integrated with our society, and that maybe should start with awareness raising, education, and then at the end also a common understanding of language and also policy translation. Maybe that could be some of take-home messages which I fully support, actually.
Exactly.
Thank you. And if I I see there is one more question, and then unfortunately we have to close, but there is thank you for the presentation discussion. How do you see the role of citizen science in transferring the Nexus knowledge to stakeholders? I think partially answered, but the floor is yours.
Sure. And I love the citizen science initiatives, and we do use them as a way to bring people together for citizen engagement. So citizen science, citizen engagement is at the heart of this, absolutely central and very important, as are living labs, the places where people will come and will discuss the issues, all kinds of people, not only scientists, not only NGOs, but a combination of all actors coming together, a multi-actor approach, and trying to solve the issue in a Nexus coherent manner, thinking that we are trying to achieve the good of the group, of the whole. So citizen science initiatives are very central also to Arsenoi. We have a lot of such initiatives. We have a group from CSIC from Barcelona that does very, very cool stuff. So we have students, we have people going out with their platforms and recording biodiversity, species. Actually, cities ask us to run such initiatives. They are very cool and we support them.
That was a best closure actually with this seminar, and I have to say with this such a good start, we are really looking forward to the next speaker, which will be taking place actually in next month, and maybe I give the floor to Samanthi to announce that, as she will be the next one also moderating. Samanthi, floor is yours, and thank you again, Chrysi, for having been here with us.
It was a lot of pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Serena. And first of all, let me also thank Chrysi and then announce the next session. So everyone is very welcome and warmly invited to our next speaker, with us Sarosh Chatterjee, which is at the United Nations University Flores Institute, and he will share some insights on water with us. And I'm very excited to welcome him. And with that,
don't be missed, and then we see each other in 1 month time. And to all of you, having a lovely afternoon. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chrysi. Bye.
Bye.